to be introduced in many countries and started to evolve as a strong banking arm of the institution, but this evolution and progress needed to be checked and controlled and regulated. Pakistan introduced reforms in banking under the guidance of Mr. Shaukat Aziz, a former banker, and of course the State Bank of Pakistan. As such, in recent years, consumer banking in Pakistan has made tremendous progress and has played a positive role in boosting the economy and in meeting the needs and requirements of the consumers. However, in the process, there seems to be a growing misconception between consumers and banks, and there are increasing reports and complaints from consumers about the problems they're facing with some of the banks. These complaints relate to repayment procedures, high and unjustified interest rates, and other bank-related issues. Some of these complainants have even filed petitions in the courts of Pakistan apart from the banking tribunal. There are also some who suggest that consumer banking is changing the lifestyle of the common man and is encouraging him to live beyond his means, which could lead to an increase in street crime. To change this perception and examine and improve the relationship between banks and consumers, Vibe Global TV and Helpline Trust have initiated these interactive programs on consumer banking. What needs to be examined is how much have the banks introduced the banking regulations and how are they applying them to protect their interests and those of the consumers, yet securing their loans and advances. In the first segment of the program, we shall be discussing how consumer banking is changing our lives and spending habits and its impact on social behavior. To help me examine these various issues is my co-host, Mrs. Ismat Mehdi, Advocate Supreme Court of Pakistan, Senior Partner Ismat Law Associates, and a member of legal panels of some leading banks. And our experts of today are Mr. Javed Siddiqui, a senior lawyer of the Supreme Court, Mr. Jamie Gitflow Jackson, a psychotherapist, and a renowned journalist, Mr. Sabiuddin Ghazi. Welcome, gentlemen, to the show, and thank you for being here. Ismat Bibi, would you like to start the
Look at it at a different angle. In a country like Pakistan, where class disparities are very pronounced now, say about 17% of Pakistan's people, they are living only on $1 per day, and about 60% plus, they are living on a $2 per day income. In this scenario, the banks are promoting consumerism, giving loans to help people to buy electronics or auto cars. So obviously this creates social tension in the society. So in a way, the government policy designed for this purpose is creating social tension. Then number two, in Pakistan, where electric supply, both generation, supply, transmission, is problematic, it is scarce.
And you pay a price for that privilege. And the reality is that in people's minds there's a fantasy. I can have today, I can pay tomorrow. But paying comes with it a responsibility. Nobody really wants to pay up at the end of the day, or most people don't. Even if they start off with a good ideology, there are pressures and changes. The basic interest rate in Pakistan is running at 9–10%. How can people possibly pay back loans and debts when interest rates are that high? It's basically, there's a criminal element to this, not considering the social needs of the individual family. It's a fantasy. In Britain and in the West, we talk about this being the never, never. Well, Peter Pan is the only person who lived in Neverland, to the best of my information. And I think it's selling people a lie. I think it's different. You know,
it's like the hire purchase thing at
same
one
thing.
time?
It's the same thing. If somebody needs a house, that's an essential thing. You don't need another gadget. You don't need another washing machine. You don't need an extra car. These are illusions, and there's a belief that the quality of your life will improve if you possess all these material items. Well, the evidence in the West shows that that's absolutely not true. And there is such a social problem now with the enormity of debt in the West. And I really am sad that Pakistan isn't taking the opportunity to learn from those experiences and change credit and loans differently and operate differently. Really, they should be for essentials. If you don't have a roof over your head, that's something different. But really, if you don't have a brand new Walkman, what difference does it make to you?
Don't you think lending agencies must ascertain the payability factor of the consumer before giving them any sort of
They
loans?
They offset.
They ought to.
But they offset an enormous amount of debt. You know, in Britain, it's quite easy to ring up a credit card company and say, I can't afford the repayments. Will you reduce the interest amount? Or will you just cancel the debt? Many people are doing
In
that. Now,
Pakistan, they don't offset. In
Do
Pakistan,
they have that
they
system
cover
there?
everything.
yes, yes, because then independent bodies look at the situation. The reality is that it will
What
be...
do you mean by independent bodies?
Well, of legal departments. Many of the credit card companies have come to terms with the fact now that actually they have to just write off these debts. Otherwise, these people's great-grandchildren will be paying for the Walkman that was bought 50 years before. It's true, that's what happens to people because they can never keep up with the repayments.
Is it also there's this apprehension or belief, misconception or whatever you will call it, that it also sort of promotes street crime and white-collar crime because you can't pay back your debts,
Of course.
so you take the shortcut,
Of course.
and you...
Responsible for all the ills which take place, what you were talking about, what Mr. Wasi has talked about. Here
Say
is
is if
first-
you didn't have, you went to somebody else in the family, you didn't go to your bank manager, you didn't go to a loan company, you went to your family, and the elder in the family, or whoever was the elder in the family, would discuss this, see what resources were available, and help out. That's how people progressed, that's how families progressed. Now this idea of it being about banks and loan companies, what happens to the institute of the family in Pakistan? That must be an impact. Now the younger generation coming up in the middle classes wants everything now, so they're separating themselves from the family of origin, the
Everything
parents.
too quickly without working for it.
Yeah, and the parents are now, and the aunties and uncles are saying, well, we worked for 20 years before we had this.
Yes.
And I find that breaking up of the traditional Pakistani family actually very sad. That's one of the things I came here for.
You see, and they cannot value it. If they get everything too soon without working for it, you cannot value what you've got.
If we did it to a
because you haven't
child,
worked
we
for
would
it,
call them
yes.
spoilt. If we did it to a child, you would call the child spoilt.
Easy money.
Easy money, exactly. And we
So,
all
but
want
you-
things.
But I would disagree here with Jamie because this was 200 years before in England where the families were there and everything. You can't live in 18th century and 21st century at the same time. If you give the modernization, the itemization of the family, and moreover, now for me or for you, anybody, going to brother or anybody asking for loan is a shame now. I will definitely prefer to take a loan from a bank on which I'll pay interest. The whole thing is, with the family, it is again a misnomer that in our society it was family which used to come to help. It was Shylock called Kabul Pathan. They
Yes.
used to come.
Yes,
People
Shylock.
used to go to landlords. They used to mortgage the human
All
being
that,
and bond
exactly.
it. So
So are you
Bonded
saying
labor.
that banks are legitimate Shylocks?
now they should not be. I'm aware of what the consequences are.
But you
So-
say that in 20 years' time.
Yes.
There is a £17,000 debt for every man and woman that lives in Britain. £17,000.
No problem, because
Are you
that-
talking about
No,
the...
UK.
Every
He's talking
UK,
about UK.
all of the loans and the borrowing that happens in the British Isles, there
Yes.
is 17,000 per head. Imagine,
Each,
that's each
Britain-
individual.
Yes, individual.
The national debt is colossal, and we're only beginning to chip it away for it now. You know, 30 years ago, we should have been as smart as Pakistan potentially could be now. I wish we had been. We weren't.
But again, this,
Okay.
And it's caused
This-
untold
this
misery.
brings in the
We are
on
economic.
our program and air your views also. In the meantime, which I would like to end the show with one slogan that I have, Jago Sarif Jago. Consumer, wake up. Or heal thyself, consumer. You have to be responsible, be a responsible consumer, because when you are living beyond your means, the chances are you will suffer at the end of the day. Once again, thank you for your time, and please be sure to join us next week. Thank you.